Let's take a look at where we left off last time. So you can see here we have a simple cube. We have our ground plane here. Even this, I want to reset it. And you can see that when I set it to 0, 0, 0, the corner ends up here. And I want it to be centered to the world like this. So I'm just going to select my ground plane. And I'm going to select center pivot. And then when I go to reset it now, you can see it's 0 to the world. The whole concept of world versus local axis is going to make more sense as we go along. But for example, the world axis is 0, 0, 0. This local axis of this character is 0, 0, 0. But if I move the character here, his local axis is now 3.22 on the x-axis. When we go to code this, we're going to be moving our character on these different axes in 3D space. And then we're going to have to reset its position. So that stuff will make better sense when we get into scripting character movement. But for now, what I want to do is I'd like to start thinking about character design and modeling and things like that. And we're going to do something very basic. We're just going to model a very basic pop can. We're going to paint a face on it. This is really just a super beginner's tutorial to take you through the broad brushstroke of the game development pipeline. So we need to install another program. So I'm going to pause the video and go online. So here we are. I have Internet Explorer open. Really, you could do this in any browser you prefer. And I went to blender.org and go ahead and just click on this download button here. And I want you to download whatever the latest version of Blender is and install it. If you need help installing it, let me know. It's really just a straightforward process where you just click next a bunch of times. All right, once installed, when you double click the Blender icon, you have something that looks like this. It's just a generic scene. I'm going to left click here. You can see if I metal mouse click inside this scene here, you can see I have a cube, I have a light, I have a camera, all this good stuff. I'm holding shift and middle mouse clicking in to pan. What I'd like to do is import in from my Unity project this box here as a representation of the scale of my model. So with this selected in object mode, this being can container, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to go to essentially, let's see, up here where it says export. If you click this little plus sign, it gives you all these export options. Make sure yours is on OBJ, and then I'm just going to click the export button. And it's going to do can container OBJ. I'm just going to click on my desktop and export it there. I'm going to pause the video because I don't want you to see all the junk on my desktop. But for now, or how dirty my desktop is, I should say. So I'm going to click on my desktop and then hit save, and then I'm going to import it into Blender. All right, so what we're going to do is let's jump into Blender here. And let's delete the default cube that's in here. And let's go to File, Import, and we're going to look for Wavefront Object here. I'm going to go to Desktop and we're going to select our can object. And I'm going to hit Import Wavefront Object. Now, the other neat thing about this is if you want to see, it actually brings in the material, which is kind of nice. So let's go ahead and I'm going to hit Shift A and let's go to Mesh and Cylinder. Let's add our cylinder. Now, if you go down into the left corner, you'll see an Add Cylinder option. This is all of our different options. We really don't need 32. It's kind of overkill. I'm going to make that 12. And that's okay, to be honest with you. For me is, let's just do maybe 20 sides. There we go. And then on the Z axis, notice Z is up. It's a different system in Blender where Y is up. I'm going to just type in 1 there. And I'm going to be okay with that. Let's see. Let's see, radius. Let's bring that in a little bit so that it's roughly the same size as that box. And then I'm going to select that can count here. I'm going to press delete. Now let's right click on this. Let's go back here for a second. So we're just looking at our cylinder without the texture because we don't have a texture on it yet. I'm going to right click. I'm going to do shade smooth. And you'll notice that it made the whole thing smoothed out, including the hard edge that we need to represent the top and the bottom of our can. So let's go to edit and then preferences here and make sure to check on for key mapping tab for pie menu. And what this is going to do is if you hit tab, you can see there's object, there's all these different modes. What we're going to do is we're going to edit essentially the different parts of this can so we can model it so that it looks more like a can, add subdivisions and cuts and stuff. And this tab menu gives you pretty much all these menus up here, like texture painting, we're going to be using to paint the texture of our can. So let's just go to edit mode for a moment. And what I want to do is I want to select the top face. So face is created when you have two or three or more intersecting edges. And you can see we have more than three. This is an edge here. And what I want to do is with that face selected, I'm going to right click and I'm going to do shade flat. And I'll do the bottom here, right click, shade flat. And now when I tab and go back to object mode, you can see we now have a hard edge for that, the top part of our can. Okay, so let's create the little lip that goes around the top of our can. So I'm going to select my can again, and I know it's selected because it's orange around it. I'm going to hit tab, and I'm going to go to edit mode. And now what I can do is I can hit T here to bring the options, my edit options if I don't see it, and it's T like Tom. Or I can hit shift and hold spacebar, and this brings up different things. So for example, there's this great tool called Loop Cut, which is also Control R. And if I left click and I hold my left mouse button down and not release it, I can move my edge around. So I want to add roughly an edge there, and I'm going to click again, add another edge there. Then I'm going to do the same down below, edge here, and then I'm going to add another edge that's right next to it. I'm going to middle mouse click and rotate a little bit so you can see that. Now the reason I added those three edges is I'm going to hit shift and spacebar and select my scale tool. What I want to do is I want to hold alt and left click here, and I want to scale out both of these edges to create that lip. So something like that. And now you can see we have what looks like the lip of our can. So I'm going to hold alt and left click again, and then hit T and select my move tool, or you can hit shift and space and select move. And I'm just going to adjust these. So I'm holding alt and left clicking to select that whole edge. And it might be a little different if you're on a Mac. And I'm just kind of tweaking this a little bit. And to be honest with you, there's the body of our can. That's really all I'm looking for at this point. Now, the next thing we're going to do is I'd like to paint this can so it has some sort of a label. So let's go here up at the right corner here. And we're going to go to shaded mode. This is going to allow us to have a texture. And in order to do this, we need to create a material to paint on this can. So down in the bottom here, you'll see this little, looks like a nuclear reactor symbol. That's for material properties. And I'm just going to hit new. And now we have a new material called Material 01. I'm going to rename this to can_MTRL. And for base color here, I'm going to click this little option. And what I want to do is I want to do a image texture. And what that did is that applied a blank image texture to that slot. Now, I have this thing where it says grid box default. That's our coming out of Unity. What I want to do is click new here, and I'm going to name this can underscore and then ALBEDO. So that albedo stands for color, and I'm going to make this color white to paint on it. And really, if you know your can is going to be like red or something, say our main hero is a red can, really I might go with like maybe a greenish label. I don't know. Pick whatever color you think is cool and fun. Then go ahead and hit OK. You'll see that it applied it here as long as we have this. Now, there's something that you need to know, and that has to do with UV editing. UV editing is essentially the flat two-dimensional representation of your can. So you can see I'm in edit mode here. If I select this face mode and I press A, you can see it already comes pretty unwrapped for me. So here's the top face of my can. When I draw on it, here's the bottom face, here's the body, and press A. When you press A, it selects all. So if I switch to texture painting here, you can see here's that 2D representation, and I can actually just paint right here, or I can paint on the can itself. So let's say, for instance, we want to have a label here. Well, what I can do is in this view, this two-dimensional view, I can say, you know what, I'm going to do a green and orange label. So I have this here, and I can press F to expand my brush size, and I can just paint in a really crude label here, like that. And after I release the mouse, you'll see it update here. So I got this label. Now on that label, let's say I want to, and some of you are going to do a lot neater job than this, I hope. Um, see, it'll do something like this. And I'm using a mouse, so if you have a tablet, maybe I'll grab a couple tablets during class. Let's go ahead and paint like that's the whole of the can. And there's other things that we can paint, height information, stuff like that. Ooh, that's a really ugly color. Let's go all the way to black. So this is kind of like the whole of the can. And then we can actually model a tab and put it on top later. But let's go ahead and paint some eyeballs. So let's do an eye here. And let's do an eye there. Okay. Give it, maybe we'll give it some brownish pupils here. This. And a mouth. The tongue. There's our main character. Maybe we should give it some legs too. Well, I think for now, this is a good way of creating this body of our can. And yeah, I think that's good. So what do we do now? Like, how do we get this back in Unity? What are we doing here? Well, first, we want to save this texture. And what you can do is inside of this texture view here, you're going to see this image with an asterisk. You're going to click on that and you're going to hit save. And this is going to save it as a PNG. I really just want to save it as a JPEG. And then on my desktop, again, forgive all of the messiness, I'm just going to make a folder called can model. And I'm going to go inside of this folder, hit save image. And then I'm also going to do file, and then I'm going to export FBX. And let's see. We want to make sure it's Z forward, because remember we were talking about, if we look at Unity here, our Z axis, which is this blue axis here, right? So if I move this, you can see Z axis is forward. We want that can to be forward there. And right now our Z is represented at the top axis. So let's just go to the desktop. Let's go into can model and just name this can underscore hero. This is our hero. And I'm going to hit export FBX. Now let's go back into Unity. And inside this art folder, we're going to create another folder. I'm going to call this playable character. And then I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to do import new asset. And then sorry about the messy desktop, but can model, can hero FBX. Now when I drag this into the scene, you can see it's the same size, but we are missing that texture. But I believe if we select our can model here and we go to materials, I don't know if I embedded this, but use materials legacy and we hit apply, did not bring it in. Okay, that's all right. So I'm going to right click, go to, let's see, material here. Yeah, it brought in the can albedo. So let's do the same thing. So PC and then import new asset. I'm going to grab this can albedo here. And with this can selected, I'm going to find this material. This is like, notice I have the can here and I drilled down here, and we don't need this camera. Actually, it imported the camera and the light from our scene, which we don't need. But here under base color, I can grab my can albedo color. You can see there is our can and our texture that we created from inside of Blender. And it looks like my texture is painted on the side, so we might end up having to treat X as our forward and back. But, you know, that's really whatever, inconsequential for the learning part of our project. And you can see Z is forward because we're looking at our main camera here, which is the default one, and it is set there. All right, that's it. That's it for this tutorial. Have fun making your can. And next video, we'll actually create some scripting for this.